I call this meeting of Township High School District 211 Board of Education to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Cavill.
Here.
Mr. Kramer. Mr. Dombrowski.
Here.
Mrs. Klinkowitz.
Here.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Lefevre.
Here. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a suggested motion that the board enter closed session to discuss minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Mr. President?
Yes.
Okay, I would like that you would ask for a discussion on moving into closed session, please.
Very good. Go ahead.
Okay, if I miss it, I apologize. Are you allowing discussion on this matter?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I move that the portion of the agenda for closed session exclude matters relating to suspension and dismissal of tenured employees, and that as this matter be discussed, and that this matter be discussed strictly in open session.
Okay. Did everyone hear that? Mr. Kramer has made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
All right. The audio connection is poor. Give me a second here, Mr. President. This matter is widely and well known to the public. I believe that this board is obligated to be fully transparent in its deliberation. Anything short of that is not, in my opinion, a commitment to the best interest of the community and advocates our responsibility and commitment to transparency.
We're going to be discussing some confidential matters, and we will have a discussion later on when the motion is acted upon. So there will still be an opportunity for discussion. Your point of order seems to just want to add another, because there will be another time for public discussion in open session later on in the meeting when the motion is acted upon.
Anyone else? Okay, so the motion is to remove the dismissal of specific employee piece from the closed session and to discuss that publicly. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Klinkowitz.
Nay.
Mr. Rosenblum.
No.
Mr. Young.
Nay.
Mr. Kramer. Mr. Kramer.
If that's for Mr. Kramer is an aye.
Thank you. Mr. Lefevre.
No. The motion fails. Now, the motion before the Board of Education is that the board will enter closed session, again, to discuss minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. Can someone move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
If that's for Mr. Kramer, nay.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Klinkowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre.
Aye. Okay. Okay, we have a suggested motion that the board return to open session. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill,
Yes?
Mr. Creamer,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz. Aye. Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever.
Aye. All right, our first item of business would normally be recognitions. We have none tonight, so we will move on to public comments and hearings. I have some public comments to make before we open it up to the people that have signed up to speak. According to Phase 4 guidelines issued by the state of Illinois, no more than 50 individuals may be gathered together in a specific location at one time. The Board of Education meeting is being held this evening in the auditorium at Hoffman Estates High School with a maximum of 50 individuals. The board meeting also will be simulcast in classrooms near the auditorium to accommodate any additional guests beyond the auditorium capacity. The Board of Education meeting is also being conducted via an electronic video conferencing application known as Zoom. Tonight, public comments will be in person. We anticipated a large number of individuals requesting to address the board this evening. The first 30 individuals in the random draw may have an opportunity to address the board and are seated in this auditorium. The Board of Education will hear public comment for a maximum of 1 hour in the order of the random draw. I will call individuals to the podium in the order they appear on the sign-in sheet, as well as the next individual to speak. And the sequence will follow that format for the duration of public comment. When you are called to speak, individuals should state their name for the record. Though not required, individuals may state if they are a resident of the district. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes to address the Board of Education. Any individual's unused time or place in order may not be deferred to another individual. It is important to note that this is a public board meeting and not a dialogue, so board members will not answer questions or respond to comments. As a reminder, masks must be worn by all individuals attending this board meeting. All right, we're ready for our public comment portion. First two individuals, Don DiGiulio, please come right to the podium, and Laura Plata.
I'd like to ask if it's possible to turn the stage lights down a little bit so we could see the citizens as they're speaking. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you for allowing us to address you guys. I don't envy the position you're in with what's going on in the environment we have currently in 2020. So my name's John DiGiulio, former resident, still own property in the district, had kids that went to schools and coached many years of sports in the district. So I'm intimately familiar with the school district, having two daughters that attended Palatine High School. I don't normally write things down, but because this is such a sensitive topic, I didn't want to misspeak at any level. And so I'm going to address just a few things. One, I'm here because of what's going on with a teacher at Palatine High School who at this moment may have already been let go. I'm not even sure, maybe let go, Miss Jeannie Hedgepath. And so to give some context around this, I'm vehemently, as a taxpayer in the district, against her being let go based on what's occurred. And it's not because of whether I agree with the language or even the whole scenario. It's based on very specifically a person's right to express how they feel on a situation. I'm not going to spend time talking about the First Amendment. I thought I might, because I think you all know what the First Amendment is. But what I will point out for even further context in the interest of time is the following. The reason I said I had kids in the school district is because we took our kids out of the school district, which was sad. We lived a block away from Palatine High School. In 2016, when a candidate won the presidency, love him, hate him, doesn't matter, my daughter, who's in AP history, went to school the next day and had her AP history teacher say, if you want to go home because you're upset of who won, or put your head down on your desk and cry, I understand. The problem I
one
have
more
with
minute.
that, and what is so interesting, is that it doesn't matter who won. And the assumption was the wrong person won, and the teacher is now telling my kid and the rest of the kids that person shouldn't have won. I did call the school. I was referred up on high to, at that time, a different group of folks at the superintendent level, and I was told if you don't like it, you can take your kid out of the district. I was appalled by the response, and so I did. We moved. I put my kids at St. Viator, which was even sadder because I love Palatine. What's important here, though, is not even that. Jeannie Hedgepath is being railroaded here, in my opinion, because people don't like her stance. I read her remarks that she posted, which was in direct response to the following. She was told by a former student, shut up with your white privilege. Aside from the fact you have
Mr. Lefebvre, 3 minutes have ended.
Thank you. We appreciate your time is up.
All right, so in closing, I think it'd be fair for me to say this.
Ms. Plata, you're next. Sir, your time is finished.
I
Thank you.
understand. Then I'll have my wife speak. It's unfair. We need to do the right thing, even when it's tough.
Next will be Virginie Ramanathan.
Okay, hi, my name is Laura Plata. I'm an alum of Palatine High School. I graduated in 2015. And I'm standing here to demand an answer as to why Black students are being disproportionately the subject of disciplinary consequence in this district.
I'm sorry, yes, could you lower the microphone?
Yes, sorry about that. I'd like to read off a couple of statistics that were gathered via FOIA request that was released a few days ago. So according to our math, white students are 45.3% of the student population. 1% of white students are suspended in D211. Latinx students are 25.4% of the student population. 2.72% of Latinx students are suspended, which means Latinx students are suspended at about 3 times more than white students. Holding that number in your mind. Now, Black students are 5.94% of students in this district. 7.3% of Black students are suspended, which means that Black students are suspended at 7 times more than white students. I stand before you to ask answers as to why it is that Black students are being the subject of disciplinary consequence at 7 times the rate as white students. Again, for reference, white students are 45% of students in this district. Black students are almost 6%. Given that severe disparity in the demographic proportion that they comprise in this district, those numbers should be, if anything, completely reversed. But why is it that in this district, which I was a proud alumni, I was a proud student, we see that students are being the subject of systemic racism. So I leave my comment there, but I do demand answers as to why it is that Black students are not receiving resources that would help their academic achievement and instead are being subject to what is an overtly racist system. Thank you.
Thank you. So next up is Virginie Ramanathan, and following her will be Sybil Harlan.
My name is Virginie Ramanathan, and I'm a 2016 Friend High School graduate. As a D211 alumni actively pushing for change, I was warned and made aware of the political diversity of the district. The only individuals who can dismiss these issues as political are those who are safely insulated from the realities that Black students face. This is no mere struggle of politics, but a struggle for validation. It's a struggle for success, and it's a struggle for literal survival. As a FREM student, I took the most challenging set of courses available to me. I received the highest GPA possible and graduated as an academic scholar. But despite this well-meaning quest for academic success, I'd left FREM with my education having failed to convey how we, individually and collectively, repeatedly let down our Black community. In my entire 4 years of completing exclusively honors and AP coursework, I had only ever encountered 2 Black students in my courses. And in my entire 4 years, I also never even questioned it. Carefully swathed in a protective bubble of the best FREM had to offer, never had I stopped to consider the plight of a student whose racial trauma is largely disregarded and gaslit by the school, or of a student at risk of literal expulsion for minor disciplinary infractions. Meanwhile, my history courses exalted figures such as FDR and Woodrow Wilson as moral and courageous American heroes while casually ignoring their roles in maintaining segregation. My US government class overlooked voter suppression as even a topic of discussion, and my English classes covered maybe 4 books in total by authors of color. In all aspects of my education, the very real turmoil of Black individuals was absent. While I understand that the disparities in Black educational attainment cannot be solely pinned upon a single high school, my own anecdotal experience makes me question what my classrooms could have looked like if D211 did more than make toothless statements touting how it values diversity. What could have been different if D211 explicitly condemned racist behavior? What could have been different if D211 truly affirmed and legitimized the identities of its students?
You have 1 minute left.
I think it is safe to say that idle contemplation on what could have been is ultimately unproductive. However, D211 seriously needs to rethink its role as an institution, especially one that claims to be committed to providing an equitable education for all. Moving forward, I hope D211 can work to provide an education more susceptible to its communities of color, particularly Black communities, with the following as starting points. Hiring more POC teachers. The pervasiveness of white professionals and authorities continually made me question the worth of my cultural heritage. Reimagining restorative justice. More can be done to keep students in school than terrorizing vulnerable students with a constant police presence. Invest in our students and divest from police. An upheaval of the curriculum. Introducing and making ethnic studies course is a requirement, but one simple edit does not correct an entire curricula that largely ignores the voices of racial minorities. Classes such as US history, US government, and English classes need to be restructured to tell more truthful and sensitive narratives.
Your time has ended.
Thank you. Sybil Harlan, you're up. Ojas Dumbre, you're on deck.
Hi, my name is Ojas and my pronouns are she, her. I really want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you today, and I want to reiterate a couple of the words that Virginie was mentioning. In my 3 years at Fremd High School, I have found several practices to be unacceptable. First, the hiring of teachers of color. Out of all the brilliant teachers at my high school, only 2 people of color have taught me, and none of them have been Black. None of them have been Latinx. In an education system that is supposed to empower its students, we fail to empower marginalized groups that are incredibly present in our community. Our English curriculums do not require that teachers choose books that highlight the Black experience and racial injustices. Our history curriculums exclude the stories of Marsha P. Johnson and Malcolm X, and it is unacceptable. I implore you to make your curriculums inclusive of the beautiful, diverse community we have here. Now is the time to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Naughton, you're next. April DiGiulio, you're on deck, please.
Hello, my name's James Naughton. I want to thank this board for giving me the time to make public comments. I'm incredibly proud of the teachers and students that are speaking here tonight, except this one gentleman who spoke. They're the voices of this community, and I hope that you're as proud to be a part of them and their community as I am. When teachers and students come together to speak about racial injustice, that's the power of this district. And I was the one who FOIA'd the data from 2017 to 2018. In that school year, I found that 71% of students of color were suspended, as opposed to 29% of their white peers. That means that you are over twice as likely, if you're a student of color, to be suspended in this district. One of the most shocking and disgusting data points to me was that 36% of students with IEPs, which I'm sure you're aware of, means students with disabilities, were suspended. You're talking about a violation of the of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, possible U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights complaint, and this is disgusting. We should not be disciplining our students with disabilities and students of color. In addition to that, 25% of students with IEPs were referred to police officers in this district. 25% of students with disabilities. What are we doing to our students with disabilities to refer them to the police? This only helps the school to
You have 1 minute left.
And I just want to address all of the studies because students of color and students with disabilities are facing these higher suspension rates. It lowers their chances of post-secondary enrollment, increases their chances of entry into the juvenile and adult criminal justice system. And it can't be overlooked that this disproportionately falls on the shoulders of students of color and students with disabilities. And in regard to that other gentleman's comment, I would suggest that he looks up Tinker v. Des Moines, which is the United States Supreme Court case. It says students do not shed their constitutional rights when they walk into the building. So if students are upset, they have the right to represent that. And that gentleman needs to educate himself on the First Amendment before he comes up here and pretends like he knows what he's talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. April DeGiulio, if you're here. Next will be Alishba Chowdhury.
I'm going to read a letter from my daughter, who is somebody who's in the district.
Are you April?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, can you pull the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth? Thank you.
This was sent in to Lisa Small. My name is Samantha DeGiulio, and I attended Palatine High School from 2015 to 2017 before transferring to St. Viator High School. I had the pleasure of my freshman year to be in Mrs. Hedgepath's class, where she taught us about AP Geography. I was not only able to learn about geography, but so much more regarding choices we make, how we as people can affect others, and overall in life in general. I am now going to be a sophomore in college at Southern Illinois University, and I credit Ms. Hedgepath for being by far the greatest teacher I have ever had. I had been talking to my parents about this whole situation regarding you guys attacking and going after a wonderful teacher. It had me completely in shock when I was told that a woman who loved each of her students as her own, supported the community with everything she did, and taught with an energy that is truly no longer found in the education system, was being dragged through the mud for representing her ideas. Mrs. Hedgepath has always presented both sides to the situations and has been completely transparent when it comes to real issues going on in our world. What I found amazing about this woman, which I had not truly realized until I got older, was that she is one of few teachers in the educational system that does not try to push her views, opinions, and ideas on kids in her class. She instead presents both sides, asks questions, and makes children think for their own in order for them to learn from their own ideas, something that is no longer existent in schools these days. I leave you with the fact that by rallying against a teacher that I know has impacted my life, and I'm sure has done the same for others, you are robbing future students the intelligence and life teaching moments that Ms. Hedgepath provides.
You have 1 more minute.
Each person has a right to speak their own thoughts and express them how they feel. That is what our country is built on. Ms. Hedgepath doesn't deserve to be punished and outcasted for doing exactly that. I hope that this is just a small glimpse in the giant impact that this woman has had on my life, and I speak for many others when I say she's an amazing teacher who does not deserve this. I think that you guys need to start listening to the people in the district and paying attention to what people are saying, because we've tried speaking to you in the past and it's not getting through. And it's not fair that we don't have, as taxpayers, a right to be listened to. And it's got to change. Something has to change.
Thank you. Alishba Chowdhury, you're up, and Carlos Salcido, you're on deck, please.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Alishba Chowdhury. I'm a current Conant High School senior, and I'm also the Vice President of Black Leaders Achiever. It's the first Afrocentric club at Conant. I just wanted to talk about some of my experience. I'm a Muslim, and usually when I bring that up to my friends for the first time, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is a terrorist joke. I've had teachers go out of their way to come and talk to me and ask me where I'm going, why I'm in the halls by myself. And it makes me feel attacked. I remember this moment, I felt like, I don't feel like going out in the hallways because I'm scared she's gonna come at me. She's gonna come and ask me all those questions again, and it's gonna be the same like conversation. I'm in BLA. It's the first club where I feel like we're doing stuff. Like we've talked about it, yes, maybe like between 5 members in a club, but this year we're like really taking off. We got a bunch of members and we're doing change. We're talking to the principals, we're talking to all the D211 schools, and we're trying to do stuff, trying to get more awareness. I think why is it that this is the first time I'm seeing this? It's 2020, and I'm the one, my friends and I, we're kids, and we're the ones actually being okay with opening up this discussion about racism. It's like such a hushed thing, and it shouldn't be. Like, if us kids don't know how to deal with this topic, the cycle's just gonna go on. We're gonna grow up and it's gonna be the same thing that's happening today. I think, as kids, we should be educated about all the different cultures, all the different beliefs about racism and about all different topics, so we know how to deal with it in the future.
You have 1 more minute.
That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Carlos Alcida, you're up if you're here. Goldeen Bradley, you're on deck. Are you Goldeen?
Yes, I am. Goldeen Bradley.
Thank you.
Resident of District 211 for the last 38 years.
Excuse me for 1 second. Aaron Reeves, you're on deck, please. Please go ahead and continue.
Okay. First, I would like to thank everyone for having us here tonight. I'd like to thank the speakers that have spoken before me. Yes, you are kids, but you did a fantastic job. I would like to say that Jeannie Hedgepath teaches social studies, so she knows about racism. She's very aware of the things that she said and the things that she's done over the past several years, my understanding. And racism is not tolerated by District 211. Their values say that they're not. So we'd like to see something done in regards to that. Would I like to see anybody get fired from their job? No. But I want my kids treated fairly. I have 2 sons that graduated from Conan in 91 and 93. I had several grandchildren graduated from District 211. I have great-grandchildren that are going to be going to school in District 211. I don't want them to run against the same thing that my kids ran against also. They were treated unfairly in their time in District 211. And that was 20-some years ago. We want justice for all of us regarding Jenny Hedgepath. She's a social studies teacher. She knows what she said. She knows if it was racist or not. We would like to see a more diverse teaching staff in District 211. I am retired now. I have all the time in the world to be at these meetings and several other meetings. That's my agenda for my retirement. I'm a retired Teamster, so we are fighters. I'd like to know, how can people become members of District 211 board?
Left.
I see that there's no diversity in the board, and I'd like to know how I can become a member, or anybody of color become a member. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Aaron Reeves, you're up. And Ariana Hanley, you're on deck, please.
Hi, I'm Aaron Reeves. I'm not in a suit like the rest of you guys, but what I have to say is still pretty valid. So Okay. You guys are so thirsty to get these kids back in school, when you really should be thirsty about getting the racism out of these schools and communities. And that's really what I believe. You're so quick to check these students for saying things bad, but when a teacher says something, it's a different story, right? That needs to be checked right away. What I want to see happen in everywhere, it doesn't matter, D211, whatever, everywhere, is to diversify these schools, diversify these boards. I don't see a single Black person on this board at all. I want that to change. And I graduated in 2018, and if I'm of age, then I'm gonna make that change. And I'm gonna be the valid response to making that change myself. I can talk to you guys all day about making racism a better issue, because it really is a huge issue. I can talk to you guys all day about that, but only you can make the change. Only you can educate yourselves. Educate these students. Put more Black history in these schools. Okay, I've only heard about white problems. Put more education in these schools. Change these history books, because there's more you need to know about us Black people. I'm Black. I am Black Lives Matter, and I'm speaking here today because I want to change in my community and this world. There's two pandemics going on, COVID-19 and racism, and we have a cure for one of them. It all starts with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Adriana Europe and Laura Hasio Manoglin, you're on deck, please.
Just for reference, my name is actually Ariana. And I guess that brings up another point. It's about making efforts to diversify schools. Again, like my predecessor just said, there is not a single African-American, I don't even see really a person of color on this board. And if there is one is not simply enough. I go to Hoffman Estates High School. I am currently attending there now. Hoffman Estates High School loves to preach about how diverse we are. We're the most diverse school in the district. One of the most diverse schools in the state. But then when white kids are running around saying the N-word, when people are being blatantly ableist by using the R slur, well, that's not really a problem. If I wanted to walk into Hoffman with this outfit right now, there would be an issue because my straps don't cover my shoulders. What about the issue with white kids thinking it's okay to go around and say a word that has dehumanized Black people for hundreds of years? I have taken AP European history and AP World History. The most we really learned about Africa was how Europe divided it up and parceled it up amongst themselves. How is there going to be a European history class when Chinese history has gone back far longer? When Native American history was the start of where we are now? When Black history is what built this country? The fact that you all have refused to address racial injustice means that you have failed every student, staff member, and community member under your jurisdiction. It is not okay. And
You have one more minute.
the woman who was speaking before me about that teacher, she was a lot nicer than I was because I want to see her gone. I don't care that it was that white girl's favorite teacher because she dehumanized a movement that helps millions of other people. I don't care about someone's favorite teacher. I don't want to hear it. She needs to be out. A teacher has no business teaching when they cannot support every single one of their students. And I would like to bring up the statistic earlier about 25% of kids with IEPs being referred to the police. For what? I have been working with kids in special education for years, and I've never felt threatened to send one of them to the police. Think about how many police you have in this room, outside right now. I have less access to a school psychologist, but I can go down and see the police officer whenever I want. I see him walking down the halls. Hey guys, how are you doing? Making sure he handles all the bad things that these kids are
Your
doing.
time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Europe. And if we could have Annie, you're on deck, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
My name is Laura. I have been going to District 211 and the neighboring District 15 for my entire schooling experience. I'm currently a senior at Fremd. And in my life, my biggest role models and the people that have made the most positive impact in my life have always been my teachers. But if everyone in this room can't see the blatant white privilege that I have in being able to say that, you're clearly not paying attention. Because in my entire schooling experience, I have only had one teacher of color, and that was my summer school teacher that I met with for only 3 weeks. I feel like it is very disrespectful to underrepresent the students of color at these districts, at District 211, among our teaching staff, because white teachers cannot associate with experiences and issues and injustices that people of color have to face. So me as a white person, I have role models that I can look up to in these schools that know my experiences, but my peers of color do not have the same privilege because all their teachers, everyone around them are white. It is a whitewashed community of teachers at these districts, and that is simply not fair, and it needs to be done. It needs to be changed. As I'm a kid, we are all kids coming up here to speak. Mostly, I've seen only children. This should be up to you guys to fix. It shouldn't be up to us to come here and talk about. This should have been discussed without us having to bring it up, because this is important and we need it to be fixed. More teachers of color need to be hired in District 211, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Annie, you're up, and Holaro Kier, you're on deck.
Hello, my name is Annie. I'm a graduated senior at Stanford University and Fremd class of 2016. 4 years after my fulfilling college experience, I still remember so vividly the ways in which Fremd high school class of 2016 failed me and all their non-white students academically and personally. Right now, this nation is erupting in anti-Black racist violence, and D211 can either step up to the plate and make drastic changes or keep hurting students of color the way it's done with ease for decades. And the people behind me know what I mean. Seeing a racist teacher from Palatine High School spout pro-Trump rhetoric in front of women and students of color was disappointing, but honestly not surprising. At Fremd, my Muslim and Indian friends were called terrorists, and our teachers did nothing to defend us. My Black peers to this day bristle at having to walk past Confederate flags in the parking lot. The theater department put on racist plays, and the Asians who spoke up were openly mocked by teachers. That is outrageous, and these wounds do not disappear after high school. You have spawned a class of graduates sorry, my throat is very dry, still angry over the racism they faced during their most formative years of young adulthood. So how are you going to change District 211? Number one, you're going to listen to the needs of the people of color that you serve and that took time out of their day to come speak to you. Number two, you're going to diversify faculty. And number three, you're going to let kids learn about their history and their heritage, not just the white kids. Ethnic studies is just American studies. America is diverse. D211 is 54% students of color. They deserve to know their histories. D211 social studies curriculum is, no exaggeration, it's piss poor. I'm sorry, it's laughable. Fremd is racist, Palatine was
You have 1 minute
racist,
left.
D211 hurt students, and without a diverse curriculum and teachers of color that can advocate for students when they're being hurt, students of color are going to keep graduating from here angry, hurt, and not knowing anything about their history. Thank you.
Thank you. Holaro, you're up, and Natalie Pfister, you're on deck, please.
Hi, it's Howard Kier from Schaumburg. First of all, I want to thank the board for taking the time to listen to us. Second of all, I'm proud of all these 211 students and alumni who have, how should I say, taken action or trying to take action about causes they care about. It's very heartening that these people want to change the world, that they're being left. You know, talk is great, but all sorts of action is needed. And a lot of that has been mentioned already. Diversity should not be taught in college. My daughter is at college and they have diversity training, they have diversity club, The students all meet and they all talk about it. And that's still a fight at college. But it would be easier if the students were learning about diversity at younger ages. Children that, little toddlers don't know how to hate. They just play. They don't care about skin color. They don't care about where they come from. They just play. It's not until they're taught to hate. Talking about a little bit about, what's education here. I know that when I went to school in New York, my social studies classes taught about African history. And I thought, why do I need to know this? Asian history we talked about. I know about different, dynasties. I'm not sure I can say the same about students coming out of 211. They're very well prepared in math and sciences and English, but it's the white history. They don't talk about the Middle East. They don't have a perspective on the rest of the world. You ask some of them about Australia and New Zealand, they just say, well, it's down under there. They don't understand.
You have one more minute.
Okay. Finally, our teachers represent our district. They're teaching our morals. They need to be held to a higher standard or to be accountable for what they do. If 211 was a private company and an employee came out and did what was done, or was a teacher, and was attributed back to that company, we all know what would happen. 211 needs to handle this issue the same way. Unfortunately, you do have unions, and we know that the teacher is protected as a tenured teacher, but I do hope that the district will take the right action. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie, you're up, and Benito Kwan, you're on deck, please.
Hi, my name is Natalie Pfister, and I'm a Frommed High School alumni of the class of 2016. Since graduating from D211 4 years ago, I have been educated by myself and by others, including some of the brilliant students and alumni leaders behind me, about the discrimination faced by students of color, including Black and Indigenous students in this district. During my time in high school, I was shamefully ignorant to these experiences. I ask all of you to follow the same path of education going forward. As school officials, I hope you know the power of education and its ability to improve you as a person. I have heard stories of incredible discrimination from teachers and students alike in this district, and of the district turning a blind eye to this. We cannot eliminate or erase the harms of years past, but as a school community, and you, as a school board, you can protect your students from this going forward. To do this, I call upon you to take immediate action in 3 crucial areas. First, to reconstruct the school justice system from one of punishment and exclusion to one of rehabilitation, and to one that doesn't pass judgment based on the color of your skin, or the content of your culture, or the style of your speech. 2, to actively recruit and hire a more diverse faculty such that the faculty reflects the incredible diversity of the students. In a district where more than 50% of the students are non-white, it is high time for the faculty to reflect that. Note that these changes need to be made not only to teachers, but also to the administrators who hold power over the rest of the school employees. And if you are thinking that the pool to hire from is not diverse enough to make this change, ask yourself if you are setting students of color up to take on college degrees and come back to serve, or if you are sending them to the school police officers for minor infractions and sending them down the prison pipeline. 3, to reorganize the curriculum so that your students not only see themselves in their education, but gain a deeper understanding and appreciation for their peers.
You have 1 minute left.
Thank you. You have seen incredible leadership by our students who have taken on the burdens of fighting systemic racism within their own schools, and I urge you to stand with them as they do. Finally, I know that this board meeting is especially concerned with the status of schools as this fall semester grows closer. We have seen throughout the country that the coronavirus affects primarily or most strongly Black and Brown communities. Please consider this as you take your decisions and do not perpetuate to the added risk to these communities. Base your decisions off of concern for the health of your most vulnerable student. Thank you.
Thank you. Benito, you're up, and Anisha Sotakura, you're on deck, please.
Hi, my name is Benito Chen, and I'm an alumni of Palatine High School, 2016. I want to first recognize that the grounds upon which we're having this meeting literally belongs to Native people and that the suburb was literally existent because of white flight and racism. So schools love preaching diversity and inclusion, but just simply saying that diversity and inclusion is essentially the equivalent of saying thoughts and prayers after a school shooting. Our student body is diverse. 56% of the student body consists of students of color, and yet 88% of teachers are white. Without properly and adequately respecting and uplifting the identities held by your Black, Indigenous students of color, you're tokenizing them as marketing tools and leaving them to the whim of a majority white population of teachers and staff who are consequently able to exert their racist implicit biases on them. This means teachers suspending students for problems not rooted in misbehavior. This means counselors explicitly discouraging Black and brown students from applying to AP courses that would get them college credit and save them time and money. I went to Palatine, and when I was there was literally one Black teacher there. And you know what? I just found out sitting there talking to Laura that he's not even there anymore because of the fact that his ideas and his teaching style was so radical that it was not appropriate for those students. That's the type of teacher that we need. And yet the student or the school let him go. And his class literally was representative of the diverse student population by having predominantly students of color, because he would teach them things like FAFSA, ways to get money to go to college, different ways that they could be supported in their studies and respecting their identities together with them. And yet he's not teaching there anymore, and Mrs. Hedgepeth is still there. Finally, allowing the military to recruit in a school like Palatine that has a predominantly Hispanic community instead of meeting that same energy by providing them with resources and opportunities to help them go to college without having to recruit into the military. When you know what happened to Vanessa
You have one more
Guillen.
minute.
That's my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anisha, you're up. And Jasmine Mundi, you're on deck, please.
Hi, my name is Anusha, and I'm a Friend alumna. I emailed the board my comment for the last board meeting, which was unable to be read out loud, but I do hope that it was forwarded to you and you read through it. I will try not to repeat myself. First off, I want to start by saying that having police officers at a public board meeting is unnecessary, inappropriate, and blatantly ignorant of the current conversations in our society regarding policing institutions. At a time where you should be reconsidering your contracts with SROs, you instead expand police presence within district walls, and that's noted. You received so many comments or public comment at the last board meeting that not even half of them were able to read out loud, but I do hope that each of you did take the time to read them after they were forwarded to you. If you had, you would know that over 50 of them explicitly mentioned 3 policies the district can take to further racial justice within its walls. 1, anti-bias training, 2, hiring more POC teachers, and 3, diversifying the curriculum. Yet even after hearing so many people writing in support of these 3 concrete actions, your reaction was to stick with the task force, which has yet to yield results. The district has to move ahead with working on these 3 priorities while continuing to work with the task force for other recommendations. Now is not the time to slow down problems using bureaucratic systems. It seems, however, that you would rather focus on creating and implementing policies like the one that required many of us to leave our signs outside today. I would like to know whose direction that was so that they can be held responsible. In the last board meeting, the board seemed shocked and unprepared to address the incidents that former and current students have brought up. There is a group collecting student testimonies of experiences of racial injustice they have faced at D211. They can be found at D211 FOR Justice, so D211 for Justice on Instagram, or D211 Community for Justice on Facebook. What you will see will shock you. It shocked me as a former student, but I really hope that it is shocking to you. Whether it's the issue of transgender rights or firing a bigoted teacher, you will wait till the last minute possible to do anything. Why none of you have introduced resolutions in support of anti-bias training, hiring POC teachers, or diversifying the curriculum is beyond me. Do you know that you're allowed to do that? Do you know that you're expected to do that? I voted for 4 of you sitting on this board right now. I chose to vote by mail in college just so I could vote for the school board race. So I will especially call on board members Lefevre, Klimkowicz, Young, and Cavill to place the 3 priorities this community is calling for on the agenda for the next board meeting. I've been a proud Friend alumna. Dr. Small, you're even my principal for some time. And the educators at Friend are the ones who inspired me to become an educator myself. And I was fortunate enough to have educators who looked like me so that I never questioned whether I could become an educator myself. Many cannot say the same.
On a closing note, I would like to continue to have pride in my former school in this district, so please do something to keep it that way.
Thank you. Jasmine, you're up. And Noah Worsham, you're on deck, please.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Mundi, and I'm a senior at Conant High School. I guess you could technically say I've been a resident in the District 211 area for 17 years. And I want to get started by saying that America is at a crossroad. The nation has the potential to impart the ideals of freedom, acceptance, and fraternity amongst its citizens. However, along with the opportunities present in America's future comes risk. Without advocacy for the universal rights being acted upon, we will fall into the shadows of our world where corruption and injustice thrive. The betterment of America and its citizens depends on our choices today. What we choose to fight for and how strongly we pursue it will dictate our future. This is especially important to our school district. I will be reiterating the statistics provided earlier and saying that during 2017 to 2018 within our school district, out of all in-school suspensions, 71% were directed towards people of color. Our district is just barely has a majority pertaining to people of color. So 71% is like ridiculous. Our most underappreciated students are being marginalized and targeted due to the lack of privilege they have within our own community. We must start within our community and our schools to re-educate our future leaders. Anti-racist education for school staff is crucial to developing a progressive America. This movement is not against America and not against District 211. It is for our nation to thrive and prosper in her future endeavors. Our love for America, our wish for democracy to succeed, is shown through our willingness to acknowledge, to amend, and to learn from our mistakes. It is only through reflection on our society that everyone can enjoy the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
You have one more minute.
Thank you. No matter how wonderful America is perceived to be, we are no stronger than our most disadvantaged and disrespected citizens in our nation's society and within our own community. Even if the quality of education across our schools is equal, it does not matter if those same students have to work twice as hard for them to succeed. The identity of our lands of liberty depends on the integrity prevalent in our government that should be for the people, of the people, and by the people. And we will fight, we will persevere, and we will stand our ground until there is liberty and justice for all students within District 211 schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Noah, you're up. And Ronnie Nelson, you're on deck, please.
My apologies, my handwriting is a little sloppy. My name is Noah Worsham.
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I would like to start by addressing the issue of diversity, like many of those before me, because as I walked in this building, I was greeted by white citizens. To my left is a white cop. To my right is a white cop. Behind me is a white cop. I look to the Board of Education. I do not see another African American here. And I'm curious, who, as an African American student who graduated from Schaumburg High School in 2016, am I supposed to confide in when I have issues such as, why am I the only Black student in my math courses? Why is it that throughout my entire primary education, I did not have a single Black teacher? Why is it that I didn't meet my first Black teacher until I was a sophomore in college? I'm just curious because these questions need answers. And I've had a lot of different answers thrown at me, many of which are that, well, my ethnicity doesn't take that much pride in their education. Well, I'm curious because we all go to the same school. How is it even possible that we take less pride in our education? How do other groups take more pride in their education when they live on the same block? And it just seems to me that as I look here and I don't see anyone else that has walked in my shoes before, that it doesn't seem that it's our lack of pride in education, but it's the lack of education that has a pride in me. And I ask you to stop looking at minorities as problems and extra board meetings and start looking at us as potentials, because as far as I can see it, it has failed. And I wish I could have more students with me here today that can say that they graduated. But unfortunately, I was alone in that endeavor. I would just like to see that be changed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronnie Nelson, are you? Great, thank you.
All right. So I think it's irresponsible to not talk about the curriculum our kids are going back to when they do go back, and to not talk about what many of you might think is over politicized, and that maybe we should leave the kids out of it. But look who's here. It's the kids. And I can't in good conscience ignore the fact that racism and white supremacy is an implicit part of our children's education. I went to school in Palatine K through 12, and I had first-hand experience with the history that we're taught there and how little Black history is included in that curriculum. Now, there are things like multicultural perspectives, which are offered as elective courses, elective, optional, not a part of the primary curriculum. Doing this makes key points about the civil rights movement, about slavery, about Black disenfranchisement and displacement optional to learn. While in the primary history that the district does teach, we largely omit these things. We praise Abraham Lincoln, a documented white supremacist who only freed the slaves as a military and political tactic, who was quoted in 1858 during a debate with Stephen Douglas saying, "I am not nor have ever been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and Black races." Let's not even talk about the rape and slave-riddled histories of the founding fathers, because the point is our children are being fed a history which praises powerful white men regardless of what they did, and only brings up Black leaders who sat peacefully in the face of white opposition, like MLK or Rosa Parks. They do not talk about Medgar Evers or Fred Hampton. They do not talk about the race riots in Cicero, Illinois, or Black Wall Street. Malcolm X is briefly mentioned, but only to compare to MLK, because it's the better narrative if peace wins. Black history is American history. And so what if the truth is more complicated? It's the truth. I've spoken to other community members and friends who also grew up here, and a select few who do know about these things or have heard about these events only learned them as an adult, either in college or from other Black people they were associated with. This kind of civilizational discourse is problematic, and it's up to the district to meet with Black community members and leaders to remedy the curriculum and take a step in a direction where our children are learning about the full, bloody, atrocity-riddled history of America. And I think it's hard to do that when you have people like Janine Hedgepath, who is going on race-fueled rants, right? Who is going on race-fueled rants to our students, and who is making and sharing blatantly racist posts on social media. How do we move forward as a society or as a community when we are willing to accept or turn a blind eye to racist teachers? Teachers who our children look up to. And the action or inaction that you take when it comes to her removal isn't something that's being ignored or that's going away. This story was run all over the country. It was on New York Times and everything. So I'm gonna quote the first man, do the right thing. That's all, just do the right thing. And since I got a little bit of time here, I'd like to say that I applaud all the young people who came out here today. You guys, this is your fight. You guys are going to school right now. So you guys are great. And what you're doing matters, and don't let any teacher or parent or anyone tell you that it doesn't, because it does. And to the board, I noticed a few of you writing things down, but a lot of those pencils stayed stationary. Think about that. We're talking about issues that affect Black people, and a lot of you have mentally checked out because you can afford to do that. We cannot. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that wants to address the board? Thank you. That will conclude our public comment portion of the meeting. The next item on our agenda is presentations. Tonight we have a presentation on the 2020-2021 school opening plan. I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Small if you want to make some introductions.
Absolutely. As Josh Shoemaker, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, and Mark Kovac, the Associate Superintendent for Student Services, get settled for presentation. We have an interesting combination of two administrators here. Board, I don't know if you realize this is Mark Kovac's last year as the Associate Superintendent, and this is obviously Josh's first year. Both of them facing some creative challenges in terms of how can we make the best of the situation for our students, give those that want to come into our schools that opportunity, and still have a great curricular connection to those students whose families choose to stay at home. They're going to review the details of the 3 potential schedules and scenarios, as well as the safety protocols for the upcoming school year. And I'd like to repeat, there is flexibility of parent choice, allowing for students to either remotely connect to the classroom or to be in person based on any given day for the parent to make that choice for their child.
We are excited to share our 2020-2021 school opening plan with you tonight. While Mr. Kovac and I are the people who have the honor of presenting the information to you, the concepts contained in this plan represent hundreds of hours of planning by our dedicated staff and thousands of emails and survey results from our students, parents, and community. While the schedules we present tonight are different from our traditional school schedule, we know that you will recognize the characteristics of our drive to provide extraordinary opportunities, innovative teaching, and exceptional learning experiences that District 211 is known for. We also think that you will share our excitement about the unique and innovative nature of our plan, which we believe meets the need of all stakeholders in the District 211 community. Before we begin to share the details of the opening plan itself, we want to set the stage by reviewing some of the exceptional events that have impacted us up to this point. In preparing to craft the options for our opening plan, we have spent countless hours reviewing our past practices, specifically analyzing what has been most effective for us. This has allowed us to identify the impact that COVID-19 has had on learning in our district, and also allowed us to create an effective plan to first and foremost keep students and staff healthy and safe, while also ensuring the high quality learning experiences and instructional strategies that District 211 is known for. There have been a lot of firsts in the past several months, starting with the day that Governor Pritzker issued an executive order that closed all public and non-public schools in our state. Although the state later provided recommendations and guidance 2 weeks later on March 27th, I can't emphasize to you enough how proud we are of our teachers and staff who literally pivoted overnight to modify their curriculum and instructional strategies to implement this thing that we call remote learning. If I'm being honest with you, it was not easy for any student, parent, or staff member to completely change our traditional in-person mode of instruction to an online model, but our teachers did an exceptional job. At the time, no one knew whether we would finish the spring semester in a remote learning environment or be allowed to return to school. The state provided a tentative roadmap, including overarching recommendations that we establish consistency for our students, that we consider each student's family, home context, and that we work diligently to engage every student and parent, and finally, that we prioritize social emotional learning and relationships. I'm sure that you may be thinking to yourself, those are the exact concepts that we already prioritize in District 211. And they were, and they still are. And that allowed us to be incredibly successful as we implemented our first system of remote learning. As you know, in the spring semester, students and staff were engaged beginning at 9 a.m. each day. We provided synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities. And perhaps the thing that I'm personally most proud of is the level of social emotional support that we provided our families. Whether it was a counselor reaching out to a student daily, or an administrator connecting with a parent to help motivate a student, or a coach hosting a virtual workout for their athletes, we continued to prioritize student engagement and the connection that is so important to students' social emotional health. In as much as our students have continued learning during our school closure, we have also learned and grown. Through continual analysis and feedback, we learned that our students and parents prefer consistently scheduled synchronous learning opportunities. We learned that fostering relationships and connection were imperative to maintaining students' social emotional health in the context of everything else going on in their world. We also learned that instruction can be and must be differentiated and personalized, especially in a remote world. We are grateful for the feedback that our students, parents, and staff members shared with us during the spring and summer semesters. The survey responses, emails, and phone conversations were valuable in crafting our next steps. One of the most talked about recommendations from the state during the spring closure was the concept of no educational harm to any child. Practically speaking, this meant that students were not allowed to earn an F during the spring semester. Rather, they were assigned a grade of incomplete instead. While there is no guidance about what to then do for these students, a group of dedicated administrators developed what we called our Summer Incomplete Remediation Program, which paired an individual teacher tutor with any student who received a grade of incomplete. These teacher tutors have been working with students over the past 5 weeks to re-engage them in learning the critical learning standards for the classes that they would have likely failed any other semester. At the end of the spring semester, there were 127 students who had earned incompletes in 204 courses. I am excited and incredibly proud to share with you that as of today, those same students have earned passing grades in 83 of the original courses. This is an incredible accomplishment and wouldn't have been possible without the innovative methods and unique opportunities that our teacher tutors have crafted this summer. I can tell you that more than one tutor has actually gone to a student's home, set up a folding table in their yard or driveway, and spent countless hours working directly with them to provide the motivation and environment where they can learn critical course content. While many other districts chose not to host summer school because of restrictions in place during phase 3 of the Restore Illinois plan, District 211 committed to provide a remote learning environment for students to stay engaged and to continue to learn during the summer months. This not only provided an opportunity for students, but also gave us the opportunity to adapt our remote learning model, including the schedule and instructional strategies based on the feedback from the spring semester. Yesterday was the last day of the second semester of summer school, and we successfully engaged thousands of students in meaningful coursework through the last 6 weeks. Additionally, we also hosted virtual and in-person athletic camps, allowing students and athletes to remain connected to each other and to their teammates during what has likely been a summer like we have never experienced before. Our State Board of Education has continued to provide updated guidance through the last several months, including recommendations for summer school, engaging student in athletics, and considerations for beginning the 2020-21 school year. While it has sometimes seemed like each new iteration presented a moving target, our teams of innovative thinking staff members have repeatedly pivoted to update our plans and ensure that we are fully prepared to simultaneously keep students and staff healthy and safe, while also maximizing opportunities for learning and engagement. We know that the health and safety of our community is on everyone's mind. So, as we prepare to share the details of our opening plan with you, we start with these topics.
Protecting the health and safety of our students and staff members has always been the district's top priority. And as school leaders throughout the current pandemic, the importance of this focal point has been magnified. Looking ahead to the start of the 2021 school year, we're mindful of the current data trends associated with COVID-19 and continually monitor guidance from state and local health officials to determine the optimal model for opening District 211 schools. In any scenario, we will only bring students and staff members into our schools when we have confidence that we can maintain a safe and healthy environment for everyone who walks through the doors. As we started to explore options for the coming school year, a comprehensive team of staff members was assembled, representing roles that included building and grounds, special education, food services, athletics and activities, technology, student services, English learners, and instructional services. The team identified critical components of health safety planning. Each topic contributes to a total package of strategies and procedures designed to maintain each school's ability to operate and deliver the quality of service and opportunity that defines District 211 while factoring in health and safety needs. I would like to go a little deeper into each of these components to strengthen your awareness of our plan. Our current mantra is, if you're ill, stay home. And we're taking steps to ensure that all staff members and students understand this expectation. The district will soon launch an online symptom checker for employees and students to use on a daily basis. While at home, before leaving for school, people will complete the symptom checkers self-assessment to identify the presence of any recognized symptoms of COVID-19 infection. The process, which only takes a few moments using a personal mobile device or school-assigned iPad, provides immediate feedback and displays results to guide people's actions. Those people who pass the screening will receive a confirmation message with a date and timestamp indicating symptom-free status. These people are clear to proceed to school. Those people who do not pass the screening will receive a message telling them to stay home and to follow up with a medical provider for further attention. The at-home screening process will minimize the number of people coming to school when they shouldn't, helping to protect the health of all people in our schools. On a typical day, our school buses travel hundreds of miles, bringing thousands of students to school and returning them home safely. We're taking steps to deliver transportation services with students' health in mind. First, our expectation is that all students will have completed the at-home screening before they come to the bus stop. Prior to boarding the bus, all students will need to put on a face mask, and then as they enter the bus, They will fill seats from back to front with a single student in each seat to minimize the time that they are in close proximity to one another as they move about the bus. Bus drivers will wear face masks and other appropriate personal protective equipment. Whenever possible, windows on the buses will remain open to maximize air circulation. Following each bus route, the driver will disinfect all high-touch surfaces on the bus, and at the end of each school day, each bus will undergo a deep cleaning in preparation for the following school day. We were challenged to develop a procedure to enter our schools that safeguards health factors while also supporting the efficient movement of large numbers of people. Our solution relies on at-home screening combined with passive body temperature scans. Let me explain. Each school has designated 2 entrances for people to use when they enter the building. At each entrance, people coming in will be reminded of the need to wear a face mask, and they'll be asked to display the confirmation message from their at-home screener. Simultaneously, a thermal camera will scan each person and display their body temperature on a monitor. Staff members with an elevated body temperature will immediately be directed to return home, follow up with their supervisor for further direction. Students with an elevated body temperature will be escorted to a designated isolation room for follow-up with the school nurse. Parents of these students will be contacted, and students will be returned home as quickly as possible with instructions to consult with a physician for further evaluation. Maintaining a clean, safe environment is paramount, and the district is prepared to elevate cleaning procedures to even higher levels than we implemented in the weeks leading to schools being closed in mid-March. The work schedules of our custodial maintenance personnel have been adjusted to maximize staff availability during the school day. These adjustments support additional cleaning and disinfecting while students and staff members are present, including high-touch surface areas, such as railings and door handles, and common areas such as hallways and washrooms. Each day, after students and teachers leave, each school will undergo a deep cleaning process in preparation for the next school day. We know that frequent hand washing is one of the best strategies to minimize the spread of infection. Students and staff members will be encouraged to wash their hands throughout the school day. In addition, hand sanitizer will be available in each classroom and throughout each school building to enhance personal hygiene. Our largest school has approximately 2,600 students, half of whom would be present on any given hybrid scenario school day. Mr. Schumacher will describe more detail about what that means. What I wanted to share with you is that managing the movement of about 1,300 students across the school while observing social distancing guidelines demands that we adapt our traditional practices. Our plan accounts for these adaptations while supporting safety factors. First, it's important to note that every student will have an assigned space during each class period of the school day. Assigned spaces help safeguard against groups of students gathering together in common spaces, such as a cafeteria or media center. Second, passing periods between classes have been extended to allow student movement to be spread out, minimizing proximity of students to one another. And lastly, all hallways will have controlled traffic patterns. You can see an example of this on the screen. A series of one-way and divided hallways will help manage student movement and maximize distancing. Feeding students is an essential service, and we are prepared to offer students breakfast and lunch opportunities on each school day. Those students physically attending school will have opportunities to eat meals in designated spaces. Students observing remote learning and who qualify for meal assistance will have the opportunity to have meals provided as well. I wanted to take a moment to focus on a question that has come up with some frequency over the past few weeks. How will the school respond if a student becomes ill? First, let's recall that the at-home screener, coupled with the if ill, stay home expectation, will greatly reduce the chances of a student becoming ill while at school, but it is still possible. In the event a student reports feeling sick, staff members in the nurse's office will evaluate to determine the presence of symptoms consistent with COVID-19. If any symptoms are observed, the student will be isolated and a parent contacted. The student will be returned home as quickly as possible with instructions to consult with a physician. The school will communicate with the county health department for guidance about necessary next steps. We have a very close relationship with the county health department and frequently rely on their guidance relative to infectious disease, including cases of mumps, whooping cough, or meningitis. Each case is examined individually. There is no stock response to the next steps. I can, however, offer an example. Consider a student who came to the nurse's office complaining of nausea, a noted symptom of COVID-19. The county health department may determine it is necessary for the student to be tested for COVID-19 and remain in quarantine pending the results of the test. Furthermore, in a most extreme outcome, the health department may advise that students who were in close contact with this student during a set of days prior to symptoms being present also quarantine themselves and monitor for any symptoms during the period of quarantine. Here's the good news. While in quarantine, the student can still participate in class using a remote connection. Mr. Schumacher will tell you more about this in a moment, but it's that remote connection that is the strength of our approach. Students can continue to participate in class even if they are held out due to medical concerns. And as we consider each of these health-related components, we still need to deliver quality learning experiences to each student. In the pursuit of this objective, the district has developed multiple school day models, which Mr. Schumacher will explain to you. Each model accounts for the continually changing community conditions and affords flexibility to meet student needs while respecting health and safety factors.
When we began our planning process for the operations and logistics of the upcoming school year, we brought together the most innovative, outside-the-box thinkers in our district to craft this plan. We knew it was going to be difficult, and so they also had to be innovative, but also the most effective teachers, counselors, administrators, and support staff that we have. As you can imagine, it was hard to narrow the field down as we have so many amazing humans that work in our district. Working with this group of staff members who researched, analyzed, collaborated, sometimes argued, and ultimately crafted the schedule and plan that you see before you has been one of the most rewarding and difficult experiences of my new role. While it wasn't included in the documentation provided to students and parents, I think that it is important for you, our board, to understand the mindset and the foundational assumptions that we developed as a team. It is from these four concepts that we worked from and used to make decisions during the multiple months that it took to develop the plan. First and foremost, we sought to maximize student learning in any location. Believing that we may actually be in a situation where we are forced to learn in different locations during the same year provided us a framework to plan for high-quality instructional strategies that will be effective in any environment. Second, we sought to plan for what we termed flexible continuity, both within and between our options. For us, this meant developing a series of options that could provide scheduled consistency and would allow us to pivot between options should the conditions in our region change. The third foundation was the need to provide both academic and social emotional support, no matter what type of schedule or location that our students were to follow. This includes the opportunity to connect with, engage with, and receive support from our staff. Finally, we place a strong emphasis on ensuring high levels of equity, specifically for our most vulnerable student population. Special consideration is given in our plan to our students with disabilities, students who are homeless, and our English language learners. Now that I have shared with you the four foundational concepts that grounded and guided our work, I would like to explain the actual schedule within the scope of those concepts. First, our 3 scenarios provide the opportunity to maximize student learning in any location. While I would tell you that we know from our experience, and it has been supported by data, that in-person instruction is the most effective way to engage students, to build relationships, and to ensure success, we have developed plans to also maximize these concepts in other locations. Since you probably know most about our traditional school schedule, I want to spend time tonight focused on the other 2 scenarios, which have been termed the remote and the hybrid scenario. In the hybrid scenario, which is most likely while we remain in phase 4 of the Restore Illinois plan, it's ultimately driven by the 50-person restriction for groups in one space. In order to stay within this state restriction, but still provide in-person instruction, we will divide students into 2 groups at each school. In this case, we will use Palatine's proposed model of using their school colors to identify each group. 50% of the students at Palatine High School will be scheduled into the scarlet group, while the other 50% will be scheduled into the gray group. To ease the burden on families, we will keep siblings together in the same group. During the first full week of school, students in the scarlet group will attend classes in person at Palatine High School. We will implement the health and safety procedures that Mr. Kovac described to transport, screen, feed, and instruct students in this group inside our school building. The other students, the gray group, will participate in their classes through remote means. While there are many options for what our teachers can use, I want to give you 2 examples to actually help you visualize what this would look like from a student's perspective. One example is where the classroom teacher would craft and facilitate an engaging classroom lesson for the in-person students as they traditionally would, while the remote students participate in class through Zoom. They will be able to see a presentation, hear the teacher instruct, and in some cases, actively discuss critical course content. Frankly, there are some people in this room tonight, and there are many people watching this presentation remotely, so it isn't all that different from what we are experiencing right now. In another example, a teacher could decide to facilitate Zoom breakout groups where a student in their classroom is directly engaging with a student at home. They could solve math problems together, they could synchronously co-author a paper, they could share presentations, or even conduct a lab experiment together where the remote student could participate with the instructions and the student in class could manipulate the materials. Remote students will also participate in class discussions, ask questions in real time, or in a wellness class perhaps, create and conduct a workout together with their partner who is on school grounds. After the first week is done, the student groups switch, and in this situation, the gray group will attend in-person instruction while the scarlet group engages remotely. This weekly rotation will continue until we can either return to our traditional schedule or we are forced to implement a fully remote learning environment. As you can see, the traditional schedule of an 8-period day has been divided over the course of 2 days in the hybrid scenario. This decision was made based on student, parent, and staff feedback from both the spring semester and the summer school. Specifically, our community believes that having structured times to engage synchronously is important to both academic and social emotional success. Additionally, student time management patterns are different in a remote learning environment. Thus, having 4 classes to focus on each day allows them to more intently focus on the course content and the assignment completion. As you can see, each class period is 1 hour in length, and there are 15 minutes between each class. Perhaps the most innovative and my personal favorite component of this scheduling model is the afternoon time available to all students. This fulfills the foundation of providing exceptional levels of academic and social emotional support to students. In the example that we just used, the students on the Scarlet team are scheduled for in-person instruction during the morning, but students from both the Scarlet and the Gray team can access the supports and tutoring in the afternoon. We call this the independent and flexible student work time. I can't tell you enough how having a committed, flexible, internal transportation department has allowed us to provide these unique opportunities for students. I would also like you to visualize what this time will look like for our students. Let's say that I'm in the Scarlet student group and I attend my morning classes in person. I would get on the bus in the morning and attend my 4 one-hour class periods. At 1 p.m., I have the option of either riding the bus home to do my independent work from there, or I can stay and eat my lunch at school and schedule an appointment for tutoring in the afternoon. I could then go to math tutoring from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. to ensure that I understand every facet of my geometry proof. I could also elect to sign up for a quiet study held in the media center and then take a bus home at 3:30 p.m. Here's the great part of the model. Let's say I'm a student in the grade group. I don't have in-person instruction during the morning this week, so I am engaged remotely. I still have the option of signing up for and attending an afternoon science tutoring option so I can keep up on my physics homework. I could also sign up for lab time in the electronics or manufacturing lab, where I can engage in lab activities to fulfill the requirements for dual credit or lab-based courses. After 3:30 p.m., I can attend swimming practice, assuming that we can offer activities at athletics, and then take the bus home after practice. The reason that this is my personal favorite component of the plan is that it really provides something for everyone. And it actually allows differentiation and personalization of the learning on a level that we haven't done before. A byproduct of the schedule will also allow our teachers, counselors, and staff to work in professional learning communities and teams, to collaborate within and across departments and schools, and to make the critical modifications to our curriculum that are necessary to provide effective learning experiences in our new reality. I realize that was a lot of explanation for the hybrid scenario, but it is unique, and I wanted you to not only fully understand it, but also be able to visualize what the student experience will be like. If you're counting, we still have 2 foundational concepts left to explore. The next is the concept of ensuring high levels of equity in our plan. While the alternating weekly schedule that I just explained will be followed by most of our students, there are student populations that the state has recommended that we look to provide additional levels of support for. While we are still working through the specific logistics, District 211 will offer students with disabilities, which may include our students with IEPs and 504s, the opportunity to attend school every day. This will allow these students to access additional resources, as well as allow our staff to fulfill the accommodation and supports in their individualized education plans. Some English language learners will also be invited to attend school every day, as the critical piece of their language acquisition involves being immersed in the school setting on a regular basis. I also want to share with you that we understand that each home in District 211 is different. Because of this, we have committed to providing differentiated levels of support for students who may need more. In our most recent community survey, 93% of our households reported having access to reliable internet. If you're doing the math, this means that approximately 7% of our households need extra support in order to connect remotely. I want you to be confident that we will continue providing internet hotspots to students who need them the most so that they can connect, engage, and achieve while in a remote learning environment. If you think back to my favorite part of the hybrid plan, every student will also have the ability to receive breakfast and lunch, sign up for in-person tutoring or assistance during the afternoon, independent flexible work time, and every student will have the opportunity to participate in athletics and activities, whether in person or virtual, depending on the restrictions in place as we begin the fall semester. The final foundational component of our opening plan is our ability to provide flexible continuity for students and parents as the world around us changes. I'm sure that you have noticed that the time schedule is exactly the same for the hybrid scenario as it is for the remote scenario. This was strategically designed to provide consistency in planning, scheduling, and timing should the health of our region change. We believe that we will be able to move between plans with little disruption and ensure high levels of continued engagement no matter what the location students are learning in. In fact, we actually anticipate having to do this at least once this year, if not more. In this diagram, we could actually begin the school year on the hybrid schedule, and if state restrictions change, easily shift into our remote schedule. If this happened, we would continue to provide tutoring and flexible afternoon learning options for students. They would simply be virtual instead of in person. Additionally, our activities and athletics teams could also pivot to a virtual environment and can continue to provide the connection and engagement that students desire. If needed, we could then shift back to our hybrid schedule by simply returning to the school building and providing the students the opportunity to engage with their teachers and counselors in person. Ultimately, while our hope is that we can return to the traditional school schedules during the 2020-2021 school year, we feel extremely proud of and prepared to continue our tradition of extraordinary opportunities, innovative teaching, and exceptional learning experiences for our community during this unprecedented time. Thank you so much for your attention tonight, and we are prepared to address any questions that we may not have answered in this presentation.
Hi, excuse me, could we have the house lights up or the stage lights up a little bit? I can't, I'm struggling to read my own notes before I ask. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for that presentation. I do have some follow-up questions. So, going back to the beginning, when you talked about students who received that incomplete, as a result from spring, and I'm really glad to hear about the progress. I'm wondering what happens if students had received the incomplete and had not managed to complete for whatever reason during the summer program. Does that remain an incomplete or what?
Sure. The guidance from the state on that is it transfers to an audit grade.
Okay. Okay. And so my next question then would be, about those movement patterns in the hallways, to accommodate as much social distance as possible. I'm wondering, I'm sure there's been discussion of how these kinds of things will be enforced, with compulsory mask wearing and then one-way movement in hallways. And, it's important to strike the right balance between being over disciplinary and just being helpful. So I'm just wondering what the discussion of the enforcement of these measures has been.
You're on the right track when you describe a balance. This is not meant to be a confrontational scenario for any of our people in our schools. And we do believe that the community at large fully understands the gravity of the conditions that we have. And it would be unlikely that someone would be unable to follow the directives that we have. But in an instance where someone is perhaps lacking that understanding, and we certainly would encourage them to develop that. And if it is determined that it's too difficult for the student to meet those expectations, they would still have the opportunity to connect remotely to their classrooms. And so we have the opportunity to continue their education seamlessly if the in-person experience is too much for them to handle.
Okay, great. So I'm also what's your plan for whatever reason? This plan is very impressive to me. It's one of the best that I've read about, and I really appreciate all of the work and the attention to detail. Even the best laid plans, though, there'll be a few cracks. And so I want to know if you can just give me a brief summary of what the discussion has been if a student just disengages. So let's say a student chooses to stay at home, maybe during a quarantine period or whatever else, and simply does not log in for a number of days at a time. What's the planned response to that kind of situation?
Sure, that's a great question. And we did experience that in the spring. And so we went through a few iterations of what works the best. And then that went into planning our summer incomplete remediation program. So now we actually have an even better step-by-step plan that says, here's the first stage if the student's disengaging. Here's the second stage. Here's the third stage. Here's the home visit stage.
Okay.
And what we found is when we got to the home visit stage, and we did this summer several times, that's the one that worked. Because when a teacher's standing there with a stack of papers and a pencil, it's kind of hard not to engage with them, right? Because the students and the parents can see it's not that we're not going away, it's just that we care that much that we're going to get you through. And so I would say the only situations we've had this summer where the student hasn't engaged with us through stage 4 is when we show up at the house and the house is empty.
Okay. Great, I'm glad. And then I just have a couple more. When we're talking about remote access, not just to classes, but we're also talking about services, does that include school social workers?
Yes, it does. The afternoon time in particular is the key part of the school day where we envision the delivery of supportive services, because we do not want to remove students from instructional minutes if at all possible. We're already reducing that time from what is typical, and we would want to maximize the use of that time after lunch, but before the end of the school day for those types
We'll be
of
able to make
delivery.
appointments, just as they would with.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. My last question is regarding special education students. So I just want to clarify, there's people watching on Zoom. I want to clarify that we're providing face coverings for staff and students. Those will be available?
Yes.
Yes.
We would certainly encourage people to use their own. They may be most comfortable with something that they have secured independently and just have that personal connection
course.
to. But if they lack that, we would have the supplies available for them to use.
Okay, and then some of our special education students and art programs need one-on-one assistance. And so I just want to make sure that we have gone as far as we can in providing protective equipment to all of those staff members whose job necessitates them being not socially distant.
There are instances of personal care delivery.
Yes.
And we have and are exploring the best ways to deliver that and maintain the safety of all people involved, including appropriate PPE.
I know it's a very difficult topic with not a lot of easy solutions, but I'm glad to hear that the conversation's ongoing.
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblum, if you have any questions, how would you like to? I do, thank you. First of all, a member of our community has asked me some questions around lunchtime and students leaving campus, either individually or in groups. Are there any thoughts around the impact of multiple students departing together, transportation-wise, traveling together to an offsite lunch, and then returning together to come back in the building?
Yes, we recognize that scenario. While we have not arrived at a firm conclusion about off-campus lunch opportunities, we do recognize that in our schedule as presented to you, a student will still have a period called lunch on their schedule, even though it might be at 7:30 in the morning on the second day of the rotation. That's an hour plus a passing period on the front, a passing period on the back, an hour and a half that a parent may actually desire their child to come home and eat a meal there as opposed to somewhere else. So we recognize that factor, and while we haven't arrived at the best solution, it is one that we're exploring. Certainly there's a complication of multiple students getting in a single vehicle, and that presents its own concerns. That is an ongoing problem that we're trying to solve.
If a student leaves campus for lunch, for instance, will they be required to follow the same entering the building protocols as they would at the beginning of the day?
The temperature scanning will be active the entire day. There are designated student entrances that would be used, and so that would be a standard part of for anyone who would come to the building at any time of the day.
Thank you. Under the no educational harm to any student scenario that we've experienced, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not in place for returning to school in the fall?
Correct.
So students who, for instance.
So we don't want to interpret that as we are going to harm students.
No. Yeah.
What it does mean is that our grading practices that were very different in the second semester of spring now unfold to more traditional grading practices that our students and parents are used to. But with the caveat, we're still very cognizant of the family situation. If a student is having trouble connecting to the internet, if we have not gotten them a hotspot yet, how do we take that into account as we look at their overall grade?
Another question I have, thank you. Another question I have is, if this week my student is scheduled to be in class, and for whatever reason, either part of the week or the entire week, I don't feel comfortable having them do that, what is my alternative?
So your alternative would be the remote learning environment that's already in place for 50% of the students in that class. And so you're a student in the in-person group that week, but you don't come to school because of many reasons. then you log in remotely, just as the other students do, and you still participate in the class through the remote means.
Now, on the reverse, if my child is scheduled to be remote learning this week, and for whatever reason, maybe they have an assignment or an experience that's going on in the classroom, and I think they would be better off being there in person, do I have that as an option?
That's what your afternoon time is for.
Sorry?
That's what the afternoon time would be for. If you're not in person in the morning, and we have to stick to the ratios because of the restrictions put in place by the state, that student could still come to school in the afternoon and engage with the teacher and the curriculum and the lab or activity or tutoring in that afternoon time.
So they would not be able to come in the morning if they're scheduled to be remote that week?
Not in this model.
Okay. And my last question is regarding if my student is remote and they want to take advantage of one of the afternoon programs, lab or office time or what have you, and or sports, and they want to come to school. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that would be coordinated? Because I'm not sure if the buses are going to be running the entire route that they normally run every morning in the middle of the day as well to pick up my child.
Sure.
If I want my child to come, or do I have to make, you know, an appointment or a reservation or let somebody know?
Sure. So the afternoon time would be a scheduled time, and there would be a sign-up process. And the purpose of that is, I'll use the example of an electronics lab. We can only fit so many students in the electronics lab and still maintain the socially distance and the restrictions that we need to. So there would be a sign-up available. There would be a sign-up available for the math tutoring. We are working with our transportation department, and as you can imagine, there's an incredible amount of logistics in simply picking up a student. And the model that we are exploring is a model where our buses would run, let's say in this scenario we used at 1 o'clock, and they would be able to take any student from the Scarlet group or the in-person group home and simultaneously allow students to then get on the bus and return to school for the afternoon. Now, it's in progress. It's extremely complicated.
Yeah. So like
Trust me.
Ms. Calvo said, I applaud those of you who have been working in putting this whole thing together, but I also want to recognize and applaud the parents who are going to have to work with it and work within it, and the complexity that they're going to be facing in scheduling and learning this new world of our situation. So thank you very much for everything.
Mr. Young, if you have any questions, how would you like to go next?
Well, I guess the one thing that I wanted to ask is, do we have full cooperation from the teachers union on this?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the three of us have been in quite a bit of communication with the teachers union, working through the details behind it. We've had some great progress. They are very agreeable to the schedule. And we're actually to the point now we're really working through some of the very fine details of unique situations. So for example, we have traveling teachers. What does this look like for traveling teachers? So we actually have the core of it ready, and now we start looking at all the outliers, if I can use that word, of unique scenarios for their union.
That's all I have to say.
Mr. Kramer, if you have any questions, how would you like to go next?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I'm using a bit of a hybrid way of communicating, listening on the internet and talking on the phone.
We can hear you.
I really appreciate the effort that the administration has put into this. I know there's probably going to be glitches, but this seems like really a superb plan to me. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Klimkowitz, if you have any questions?
I do. Thank you very much. I was just wondering about some of the classes where there are hands-on classes, such as science classes. How would the students work together, those that are home and those that are in the classroom?
Sure. So I'm going to answer two things. Number one, certainly the classes where students have to manipulate a hands-on product, we're working through what that looks like, and also modifying our curriculum for a situation where a lab would be done typically in a group to now where it would be done by one person. And so the an option that our science teachers and other teachers that teach labs would have is to still create lab groups, but the lab group would be a pair of students where one student's in the classroom and the other student is at home or in a remote environment. And those students can still be connected through Zoom, possibly in a breakout room, or possibly through another app that we have on our District 211 issued iPads. And an example could be where both students have the instructions for the lab and the questions, and the student at home is reading through the instructions and, for lack of a better way to explain it, telling the student that's in person how to manipulate the equipment. And then they do the lab experiment quote together at the same time through the virtual means. And then they could have the discussion about the questions and what is going on and the application and the analysis in the same way through that means.
Also, what about dual credit classes that involve Harper? Utilizing, whether we have to take our kids over to Harper or any of the dual credit classes?
Sure. So we are working with Harper on specifically what that could look like because of the decisions that they have made for their campus. And that's part of that afternoon time as well, where there are certain dual credit classes that students have to do particular assignments in a lab setting or put a specific amount of time in. And so we were careful to craft that so those students could have the opportunity to still fulfill the dual credit opportunities and what the projects that they need to do for their Harper courses.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit more about the schedule? I know some of our schools start earlier and a couple of them start a little bit later. Are we still looking at doing the same type of starts at each of the schools?
Correct. The example we used was the Palatine, which was an 8:15 start. The Hoffman Estates would be still a 7:30 start. And so it's still an hour of class, 15-minute passing period, 4 classes.
Okay. And another question in regards to the lunches. Will we have the cafeteria or will they be bag lunches or?
Sure. The second part of the most complicated, not as complicated as transportation, but food service is certainly right up there. And so we have an amazing team that's working through the options of what that looks like because of the restriction that we can only fit 50 students or 50 humans rather in the cafeteria space at one time. So we're identifying alternative locations. And we're identifying alternative, what I'll call innovative methods of preparing and packaging both the breakfast and the lunch, and then distribution models of getting them to students quickly and efficiently while also providing safe places for students to eat.
Okay, and you also spoke about students that are out of class that particular week. They're still eligible to receive meals. How would that go? Do they come to the school to pick up?
We're working through different scenarios for that problem. One possibility is using a similar delivery system to what we've had the past few months. As a matter of fact, today was the last meal distribution day in our current sequence. And I heard a figure earlier today of how many meals were distributed. Do you recall, was it around 4,000 meals just today?
I think it was between 3,000 and 4,000 today. Which is
so it has been a tremendous resource for our community and one that people have utilized and has been successful. What would likely be different if we followed that particular model in the fall is that each school would serve as a distribution point as opposed to just Palatine, Hoffman, and the district administration center.
Okay. And I'd also like to extend my thanks and appreciation for everything that you've done. And this is a very thought out program and scheduling, and has the concern of everyone involved. You've taken that concern into developing the plan. So thank you very much for everything, for the administration, the teachers, and between the bus drivers and cafeteria and everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Dombrowski. Yeah, as somebody who's kind of watched the iteration at home of what's been kind of progressing. Obviously in the spring, my son would have his, he would have an attendance check-in, and then he'd have his classes issued to him and would do those throughout the day, but he wasn't locked into a video classroom. My daughter over the summer took summer school classes. She had to be on Zoom physically engaged for the whole duration of the class. I'm assuming that when we come back in the fall on the hybrid, we would be engaged with this constant stream of communication and we would be locked in. My question is, have we tested our infrastructure for that? Are we confident that we can have the capacity to handle that type of data flow, considering that spring was sporadic and summer school was a smaller volume, and now we're looking at a constant data stream in and out of the buildings.
We asked ourselves that same question because the last thing we want to do is set ourselves up for something that won't be supportable. And our own internal people, along with the consultation with our third-party providers, has given us great confidence that we are prepared and capable of delivering this.
And then my next question is, as you were doing the studies and developing the plans for these hybrid models, obviously our traditional classrooms dictated our student to teacher ratio, and we're carrying that through with the hybrid model. Was there any discussion about the adequacy of the student teacher ratio, if that needed to change based on experience from the fall or the summer? I'm just looking for some thoughts or how.
Are you asking about class size? I'm not just trying to interpret. Right. Our class sizes will not change. What will change in the hybrid model is the number of students physically present, but the total number of students in a single section of a course would be consistent with our past practices.
Right, and the engagement model is different. Obviously, when you're physically in a classroom, you can make eye contact with students. There is kind of that sweet spot of somewhere between 20 and 30 students, and you don't exceed that. But now, once you're distant and you have an electronic interface, has that any of our teachers provided feedback as far as if that's something that's a detriment to the experience they're providing or a benefit, or how does that work with them being able to read their engagement?
We worked through multiple models of percentages of students before ultimately landing on the 50% for the hybrid model. And so it wasn't necessarily, we didn't have any negative feedback from the teachers saying, I need more, I need less, I can't have this many in-person or remote. And so there was no negative feedback from any experience, whether it be spring or summer, based on that. Ultimately, the reason we landed on the 50% model was, one, it fits a lot of the restrictions or most all of the restrictions we have with the state as far as social distancing and the spaces that we have, but it also creates the learning interactive platform where students could be paired up because 50% are home and 50% there. So in as much as it's about what the teacher can engage with and control, it's important for the teachers to be able to put the students into groups and pairs. Like that was a discussion that was that's a continued important learning strategy that we want to use. And so being able to do that was important in that piece of it.
And overall in our schedule, the afternoon time for students who would be in a remote setting during scheduled class time was critical to offer them additional support if it was necessary because of the difference. We know, I certainly recognize, and I think I speak for most, if not all of the individuals who were part of our development group, recognize that replicating the classroom is near impossible. It is not the same. We'll call that out. But what we do want to provide students is the opportunity to make up for that differential by the opportunity to come in the afternoon and schedule time with their teacher directly or in some sort of supportive setting to help close the gap and keep them on pace with the rest of their peers in their class.
And just to follow up on the engagement of counselors and scheduling time, typically it's been feasible where students would be able to schedule time with their counselors during the day, maybe meet during a class, but we're going to discourage that. Is there enough capacity within that window of an hour and a half for our counselors to do what they need to do?
There are two scenarios that I think are relatively connected to your question. The first is that individualized appointment that a student may want to make with their school counselor. That can still occur during the school day, the 4-period block, during the time that a student may not have a scheduled class, such as lunch. So that is still available the way that it always was. Another open period for many students is a study hall period. What we don't want to do is have a student come out of English class, meet with their school counselor. We've always discouraged that and don't envision changing our approach. In addition to that, the afternoon time is also available for that individualized appointment. The other type of engagement between the school counselors and students is more small group, large group focus, and that is often used when we are delivering targeted messages or information. I've been meeting closely with the department chairs of our guidance departments. As a matter of fact, on Tuesday, we concluded a summer curriculum project that focused largely on the enhancement of our program and also how we would deliver services in a hybrid model or a fully remote model if that is the way that we go. So they are prepared to utilize creative approaches and utilize the afternoon time in a hybrid model as a venue where they could have students sign up to be part of particular programs and then conduct direct outreach with students who don't engage with that of their own choice, because there are important topics that are not ones to miss. We don't want to just rely on students' own motivation to engage in them.
Thank you. That answered all my questions.
Just one last, I really appreciate the afternoon block as well from the other aspect. I know that when staff were asked to pivot, on the dime, on the spring to remote learning, that a very common concern was that staff felt like they had to be available 24 hours a day because emails and text messages from students needing assistance would come at all hours. And so I think having a dedicated block of time that's more flexible would also hopefully narrow that focus down so that students get answers in a timely manner, but that staff aren't up at 11:30 at night answering emails from students that need help, because there was dedicated time for that too. So
structure is always helpful.
Yeah.
And I think this adds a degree of understanding amongst all people of the available time for students and staff to engage.
I appreciate it.
When we talk about, I'm sorry, go ahead. When we talk about the partnership, this is different for everybody. It's different for the students, it's different for the parents, it's different for the faculty, and communication certainly is key. Open-mindedness is also key because we have to learn the system. We will be making modifications to the system because we're predicting our best scenario for it, and we might have to use some shifts along the way. What I do love about it is not only that flexibility in the afternoon for all students. So a parent could say, even though I'm on my week, my students on the week off, I want to send them in the afternoon. We can still make that happen. The other piece behind it is the continuity between the remote and the hybrid. As I think Mr. Schumacher said, we will most likely have to flip between them. And because the schedules are the same, we keep that continuity piece, at least for that, for our students and our staff and our parents, that the schedule is the same, that AD rotation is the same, what they're looking at is still the same. But and I think Mr. Kovac said this, that I want to repeat, we do our best work when we're in a traditional setting. And our teachers are so open-minded right now to say, okay, even though I really excel doing this activity, I know what's important for my students to learn for this course. How do I now creatively do it in this new model? And we are providing some professional development. We're providing that collaboration time to make sure that all of our teachers feel comfortable as we share what's working and what's not working. And our departments are so innovative and they're so different. When I hear some of the stories of when Josh is working with the department chairs, I mean, they're sparking right now in terms of we could do this, we could do that, things that they never thought of because it's not a traditional environment. We'll be hopefully very creative, and we still in District 211, we know what kids need to know in each one of our classes. We know those core critical learning standards. We take that knowledge with our creativity and our open-minded, and we can still create some wonderful educational experiences for our students.
I have one more question, if I may. The health and wellness classes, how are we looking to do those?
Sure, I can answer that. And as Dr. Small said, I've been working with all the departments over the last few weeks and months, and they're actually one that I'm really excited about. They're being incredibly creative regarding the use of our outdoor spaces when weather permitting, as far as having students being active. And they're also taking a critical look at prioritizing the curriculum and using the opportunity that we have right now to really talk about health in a different manner, right? And so they've got great ideas for outdoor activities and different types of fitness, and also different types of conversations and teaching methods that I would say from the traditional physical education class. So I'm glad you asked, because that's one I'm most excited about, frankly.
Thank you. You know, this is such a critical topic to our schools and to our community. And my hope is that the public, our constituents, our parents, and students understand that we have and do hear them, and will continue to hear them. And as we move forward, hopefully understanding that this isn't going to please everyone, and it's not going to necessarily be most satisfactory to everyone, but this is something that's been taken into consideration and advisement, and really this is offering the best that we can under the circumstances. And as Mr. Schumacher and all have said, you know, this is something that very well may change as things change in our community and with what we're allowed to do. And hopefully the public and our constituents understand that and support it as best as possible.
I was very forward in my last communication with parents saying that based on what is currently happening right now, we can't open a traditional school because we are so large. And I think that's important to remember. I have, as a first-year superintendent, the collaboration that's been going on in this area with other superintendents has been tremendous from a K-12 perspective. And what I have learned very quickly as we discuss what we're trying to do and different creative options we're doing, every district is different. Our challenge is in District 211 is the size of our school. We can't do what certain elementary schools or junior highs can do because we're talking about 2,600 students and another 200 humans, faculty that are in that school. And to make that school function under the restrictions of keeping people safe based on the stipulations, that limits our options. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity for our students based on the size that we're dealing with and the safety protocols that we need to put in place to make sure everybody's safe.
And just to continue with the attaboys, I was on social media today and I saw some parents from D15 basically saying, we want the hybrid, we want what D211 is doing. So excellent. I mean, you can't get a better testimonial to the effort that you put in than the parents clamoring for what you're presenting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can we get the lights turned down just a little bit, please?
Ms. Cavill, can you see okay?
Yes, I'm good, thank
If you
you.
can,
Yeah, 'cause right here is like,
all right, perfect.
thank you.
All right, our next item is the consent agenda. We have a suggested motion that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klinkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever.
Aye. Next, we have our special reports. First, our Freedom of Information Act requests. If there are no questions here, our next report is the equity report.
If I may.
Yes, please.
As discussed at the June Board of Education meeting, we are presenting an outline of an equity plan. We are fortunate to serve students and families that represent a large diversity in terms of culture and backgrounds. We have had this conversation at the table and we want to continue the conversation. We want to see how equity can be integrated even more into our mindset, our actions, so that we can understand and respond to the ever-changing and current needs that our students are feeling and facing within our schools. So this equity plan that is presented to you tonight gives the opportunity for the voices of our students, our staff, and our families from our community to come forward, for us to organize priorities and practices based on those voices that we're hearing, to analyze the data to identify our goals, and then create a strategic equity plan that defines and publicizes how we're going to move forward and change. That is within the report there, and you can see on page 2 of the report some of the core committees that will be organized, as well as a timeline behind it. And I know some of the board members would be interested in being a liaison with on these committees. And after this meeting, I will solicit your interest to that so that we can get people involved who want to be involved, to hear the voices of our staff, of our students, of our families within our community.
The only comment I have on the report is the schedule. It seems like it's a long walk to spring of 2021. Is there any way to accelerate some of this?
Well, the first piece of this is to listen, to truly listen with open ears and get the people to the table so that we can hear what they're saying from all aspects of it. Coupling that with the start of our school year, we need to have a little balance behind that. The other piece is that we certainly want to make change. We've heard a lot this evening and in the past via some of the communications we've received is a review of our curriculum. And the review of the curriculum, you as board members have experienced that. That comes through to you for approval. So you as an entire board would be involved in that. And we would have to make some changes that we can do as quickly as those meetings can occur. So that might be some of the first pieces, and certainly the conversations with our families, with our students, with our staff members would be the first one that happens, and probably the most important one as we look at this in terms of truly listening to hear what their experiences are and how we can make them different. So you'll be getting reports along the way as we move forward. It doesn't mean that if there's something we can't put in place right away, we can certainly do that.
Mark Kramer here. I agree with Mr. Dombrowski. A year is too long. Is there any way that there could be something in place and tangible by the end of the first semester?
What I would suggest is that we listen first, because for us to say this is exactly what we're going to change, we need to open our doors to hear more voices. We have certainly heard some this evening and in the past. We need to hear some more. And I would be extremely comfortable moving forward after we've truly listened to some of those voices to get an analysis of where we do need to change and where we could change very quickly, and what changes might take a little bit more time.
I mean, I'd rather do a good job and take a little longer than to rush something and come up with something that I'm not proud of. And I think the listening piece is really important. Plus, I mean, we're going to have logistical restrictions. I mean, we just went over the fact that our schools are going to be in a hybrid model most likely, and even on top of that, to most likely have to move to all remote and then back to hybrid. So I think that inherent in that, it's going to make it obviously a little bit more difficult to get focus groups and everything logistically organized while still maintaining everybody's health and safety as the first priority. So I'm quite satisfied with the timeline, all things considered, as long as there's a very good product that I'm proud to present at the end. My only comment, it's not really a question here, but my only comment is that when we're talking about that listening piece, I want to, as we're going forward and getting this together, I think it's really, really important that that listening piece to be community driven, rather than, and I know that this isn't what the administration intends to do, but I want to make sure that we stay away from a kind of top-down approach. I want to make sure that when we say we're going to listen, we're going to listen to everybody in the community that wants to have a seat at the table. And I know that you know, as we've seen tonight and at previous board meetings, there's a lot of interested people that want to have a seat at the table. So I think it's prudent to take our time in logistically planning to make sure that everybody who has a seat at the table gets that seat at the table and then does so in a way that doesn't compromise their health and their safety. So going forward, I appreciate, you know, that we'll have regular updates. And that's something that's just really important to me, is that the listening piece be community driven and be, you know, diverse in and of itself.
So here's my thought. A couple things. One is we represent the community. And to Ms. Cavill's point, I would rather take extraordinary measures to solicit feedback and input from the community in whatever way, shape, or form that may come, be it through engagement meetings, through emails which we receive, or any other way that the community would like to share their thoughts and opinions. My second thought on this is regarding the timeline. This is a timeline to create a plan. That's great. However, I think we need to take action. And if there are ways that we can act in a more equitable way, we've heard some comments even this evening with some suggestions. I don't know what our timeline is for recruiting staff, but if there's ways that we can act in a more equitable way sooner than when we have a plan drafted, that we can really do some things with results sooner than later, I would like to encourage us to do so. Some of the comments were around recruiting more POC. If there's a way that we can look to start acting upon that rather than waiting until we have a plan drafted on how we can do that come spring, because my thought is spring is too late to do those kinds of things from a recruiting perspective, to diversify our workforce and do what we can to put forth those efforts. So I'd like to encourage that we act as quickly as possible, even if some of those actions are done before we have a drafted strategic equity plan in place.
I support the listening. I think that that's really important. I think having a community involvement is extremely important. I think that what we need to also encourage is that there be a balance on the input of what we're hearing. I'd like to make certain that we get input from everyone and someone does not feel that they've not been heard. I know that when we did the strategic plan a few years ago, we did have community members. They kind of facilitated for certain things, and we did get some very good input to be able to go forward. Somewhere along the line, then there has to be a dialogue. So it can't just be that we hear everything. There has to be some conversation going, because I appreciate our people who spoke today. However, I think they may have been missing some information. So I think it's important to be able to share that in discussions and then help us build the equity plan to move forward and help all of our students and staff and, you know, make us better than what we are. I will strongly again encourage that we have students involved, and students with varying opinions and diversity, have them part of this also. I think I was a little concerned about hearing from some of our students that students who have concerns, their concern wasn't addressed. And maybe that's an action step that we need to take and take a look at that and address that issue. And as Mr. Rosenblum said, maybe I'm thinking that's an action that we can do if that is a major concern of students, of taking a look at that. So I'm looking forward to this. I hope that it addresses some of the concerns that were brought forward today and, works to make us a better district. Thank you.
I think in terms of this conversation about like what can we do to be actionable before we have this plan arriving in the spring, and then to Ms. Klimkowitz's point that sometimes there's some missing information. I mean, as a premonition, when we had topics for future discussion tonight, I was going to propose, and I will propose, that in subsequent board meetings, sooner rather than later, we have a presentation, like we had a presentation on a school plan tonight and have these regularly. We should have a presentation for us and also the community members about, for example, the professional development that our staff regularly undergoes. We already have that information. I know that some of our professional development programs include anti-bias training and take place on topics of diversity. And I think before we can know how to do that better, I think the community deserves to know what we've been doing up to this point. And so, even though that's not an action in the way that we're describing right now, I think it might lead to more actionable outcomes, more specific actionable outcomes at the end of that presentation, and at least a clear direction on where to go before we even get such a plan in the spring, if that makes sense.
The 4 subcommittees that are currently listed on here as a draft are the equitable opportunity and achievement, equitable curriculum and instruction, equitable practices and mindsets, school, family, and community relations. So if any of the board members have any particular interest in being liaisons within any of those particular areas, I will put out an email after this meeting for next week, and you can let me know what your priorities are, and we can get you scheduled to be liaisons within those groups.
Thank you.
All right. Next report is our notice of intervention in proceedings before the State Property Tax Appeal Board. If there are no questions here, we move on to unfinished business. We have a proposed policy revision, prevention of and response to student bullying. We have a suggested motion that the board policy file JFCH, prevention of and response to student bullying, be revised as proposed and included in the board policy manual. Further, that the superintendent be directed to make appropriate distribution. Can somebody please move that? So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever.
Aye. Next, we move on to new business. We have a resolution, COVID-19 2020-2021 school year opening plan. Suggested motion that the Board of Education approve the Township High School District 211 2020-2021 school year COVID-19 plan resolution as presented. Can someone please move that? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever.
Aye. Next, we have student user fees for 2020-2021. 2 motions here. The first motion, that the Board of Education waive the textbook instructional fees of $170 for all students for the 2020-2021 school year. Can someone please move that? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Abstain.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever.
Aye. Next, we have a suggested motion that the Board of Education waive the student parking fee of $75 per semester for all students for the 2020-2021 school year. Can someone please move that? So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
These are still on a first come, first served basis. We're not concerned that we're going to have capacity issues if there's no fee associated with them.
We will still have some type of scheduling, but because we're going into such a unique scenario for next year, it's beneficial for us just not to charge anything and just organize who's driving, do we have enough spots, can you drive, and let that unfold in that way without attaching a fee to it.
So we're planning on issuing more permits, but not necessarily having all the vehicles that are permitted on the lot at the same time. That's the plan.
Right, because we'd be in a hybrid model or a remote model where they're not there. If we flipped to a traditional model, we would have to change our approach.
Okay, so we'd have to pull the cat and put it back in the bag. Good luck.
That's why there's no fee attached to it, at least on that part.
Okay, thank you.
Or hopefully no fee attached, I should say.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever,
Aye. Next, we have resolutions directing interfund transfers for life safety projects. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education directs publication of a notice of public hearing to take place at its August 13, 2020 meeting to consider the permanent interfund transfer of $1,511,361 from the Life Safety Fund to its Operations and Maintenance Fund. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever,
Aye. Next, we have the revised school calendar for the 2020-2021 year. The suggested motion is that the Board of Education approves the revised school calendar for the 2020-2021 school year as presented. Can someone please move that? So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. LaFever,
Aye. Next, we have a proposed policy revision, graduation requirements. This is just for informational purposes. If there are no questions here. The next, we have a proposed policy revision promotion. First reading again, if there are no questions here. That will bring us to our proposed policy revision agenda format. Again, the first reading.
Yeah, I would like to state that I'm opposed to formally having closed sessions prior to public comments.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, that will bring us to our Illinois Association of School Boards Annual Membership 2020-2021. We have a suggested motion that the Board of Education renew its membership in the Illinois Association of School Boards for the 2020,
Thank you.
2021 year, and authorize the superintendent to pay the annual dues of $19,714. Can someone please move that? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I still think $20,000 is a lot to pay for the membership to this organization, and in the last 5 years, I really haven't seen that much benefit coming out of the IASB.
I have some
May I
comments.
also comment, please?
Mr. Kramer,
I
why don't you
agree.
go ahead and you go next, Mr. Kramer.
I'm sorry. Can I speak now?
Yes, please.
Okay, there's a delay in the audio. I agree that the cost structure is far too expensive for the value gain. Large school districts pay a disproportionate amount of the fees rather than smaller school districts. And I think that's unfair. I cannot vote yes on that because of this. What would be willing to reconsider the cost if they were restruck, or perhaps, as an example, perhaps there could be a credit for services and conferences that large school districts attend, say perhaps 30% of the total fee. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some comments. First of all, the fact that not all board members participate or partake in the benefits of our membership is not something that our school district should seek to look for a credit or a reduction in our fee associated. The fact of the matter is that we all do have the rights of membership to take advantage of all of the things that this organization does provide. This organization provides inordinate amount of training, networking opportunities, and advocacy in support of our function as a school board and a school district. It also provides pooled services and information and expertise. And as a large school district, we also are able to have one in-district workshop at no charge. And we also have the distinct advantage as a large district to use their press subscription, which is included in our membership and has them review any and all policies that we look to put in place to make sure that they're in the best interest from a governance perspective and in the operation of our school district. One such in-district workshop that is available to us now is one on equity. And in fact, it's titled Equity and Educational Imperative. It's a 3-hour in-district workshop, especially targeted for school district boards to help us be more in tune with equity in our community and as governance. The dues, in fact, have been reconfigured for this year, and as described in the membership proposal, have dropped over 15% compared to last year. Last year it was $23,274. This year it is $19,714, whereas we're getting more benefit offers than we did last year at a higher price. One additional comment I have is that in Illinois, 99% of school districts, there's 2 school districts in the whole state that are not members of this organization. Another thing that this membership provides us is the opportunity to participate in the III conference, which is only open to member districts. So for that reason,
But your
I
point,
offer
Mr.
my
Rosenblum,
comments.
about having policies reviewed, we have attorneys on staff. This makes this a redundant cost. When I look at 99% or the 2 school districts that aren't participating, I grew up in a house where, you know, my parents would ask me, if everybody's jumping off the bridge, are you going to jump off the bridge with them? That really doesn't sway me with that regard. I guess between our last renewal period and this renewal period, I don't necessarily see a direct tangible benefit from our membership as far as what has come back to 211. I know we've provided a lot to IASB. We've given our dedication to providing resolutions and kind of spearheading things and basically providing the organization with some of our expertise and resources, but I see that as a one-way thing. I don't necessarily see a return on this investment for our district. With all of our resources, this appears to me to be redundant.
Thank you, Mr. Dombrowski. As we discussed a year ago, there are other professional memberships to which some of our board members are members of. Not questioning whether we're getting $19,714 worth. I'm not going to break it down specifically. But if I recall correctly, a year ago, we did participate in an in-district workshop for our board on governance and how to work better as a board. Whether the press subscription is a redundant item or not, there are other advantages from advocacy representing our school district at the state and national level that this organization provides. And I'm not asking the board to jump off of a bridge. Rather, I'm asking us to take advantage of something and to support an organization that supports us.
I appreciate, even though I wasn't able to go to the conference, I appreciate the regular publications. I find them to be very helpful. I also appreciate the online workshops that are regularly offered, but I most appreciate that individually, on numerous occasions, me being a relatively recent, a new board member, I've called up, ISB leadership and their legal team on numerous occasions with various questions about my role and, the governance about what I can and cannot do as a board member. And I really appreciate their guidance. That wouldn't be available to me. That's available to me because I'm a member of a board that's a member of the organization. And so I do think that the fees are expensive. At the same time, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the benefits that I've gotten as a new board member. The training was very helpful, and I really appreciate the ongoing assistance that's available to me.
I would be interested in an answer from the IASB why it's necessary to charge more for a large school district that has 7 board members as opposed to a small school district that also has 7 board members.
Anyone else? Ms. Klimkowitz?
Well, I have something to say.
Go ahead, Mr. Young.
I believe the benefit of being on a partnership with them has been the interaction with other board members across the state and to see what directions and what ideas that they have done to better their school district. If we go independent, we're going to lose that interaction and lose that talking point with other board members to see how they solve other problems. Plus for the fact that the courses they offer, or which they offer online, has been exceptionally helpful to me too. So I totally believe in this organization. Thank you.
Ms. Klimkowitz?
Thank you. I truly support this, the Illinois Association of School Boards. I think there's a lot of value to be said for being part of a large organization. Some of the resolutions that we pass do affect legislation, and when it's coming from such a large group, it has a little bit more power, more impetus, and I think that that's valuable. The workshops are valuable. Being able to attend the conference, being able to exchange information. I think those are all values that help us. The orientations that are done for new school board members, the literature that's put out, I think that that's important to help educate a new school board member and to get them to understand their role as far as governance, as opposed to trying to micromanage and things of that nature. I know that several times we have talked about the dues, and they're high. At one point, we have a new director that is on the North Cook division here, and hopefully she can see about maybe making some changes to it. So that's kind of where we go at this point, and fortunately there is a little bit of a decrease, so that's moving in the right direction. So I truly support this and remaining part of the Illinois Association of School Boards.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill.
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Nay.
Mr. Young. Mr. Young.
I'm sorry, I had it on mute. Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz.
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Nay.
Mr. Lefevre.
Aye. That motion carries. Next, we have 2020-2021 Education Research Development Legislative Renewal. Suggested motions that the Board of Education renew its membership in EdRed for the 2020-2021 school year at a fee of $5,000. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre.
Aye. Next, we have potential topics for future discussion. Does anyone have anything?
Yes, I would like a presentation in an upcoming board meeting about the professional development that our staff undergo, in particular regards to diversity and inclusion and any anti-bias training that staff in our schools undertake, administration included.
Thank you for that suggestion. I agree with that.
Dr. Small, clear on that? Anything to clarify?
No.
Okay, I would like to propose discussion around our participating in an in-district board member workshop, the one provided by IASB, entitled Equity and Educational Imperative. More information is available on their website.
Mr. Rosenblum, the information that's available, that would include a description of the workshop as well?
It does.
Okay, great.
Okay with that, Dr. Small?
So are you asking that to be agenda item or you want information sent?
An item for discussion.
Item for
So
discussion.
an
Okay.
agenda item, asking the board members when they see it on the agenda to check it out so that we're able to have a good discussion at that board meeting on whether or not we should participate in that particular in-district workshop.
I agree that the workshop may in fact be valuable and timely. Why can't we just schedule it?
I'm sorry, what was the question? It's hard to hear you, Mr. Kramer. Did you say, why can't we just schedule it? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Well, maybe, does it need to be put forth as a motion or?
Personally, I would like to see the description of the workshop before I vote yes on a motion. I mean.
So that would be a reason that we can see what it is, come back and talk about it. And if that's what you decide we want to do, then everyone can do that and agree to that in an informed way. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, any other topics? That will bring us then to committee reports. First, we have EdRed.
There are no reports at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Klimkowitz. And next, we have the Facilities Committee, Mr. Young or Mr. Dombrowski. Mr. Young, how would you like to go first?
Okay, basically, construction's going well throughout the district. The culinary lab at Palatine is near completion. They'll be installing the casework next week. The slab replacement in the back of the auditorium is near completed, with carpeting expected to be put in next week. Toilet rooms there are also complete. The boys and girls locker rooms, slabs have been poured, and they're working on the air conditioning systems for that. The pillars replacements over at Conan is progressing well. The football field at Conan, the turf is up and it looks really good. They still have to work on the track, and the track work will begin next week, and then they'll have some concrete work to be done. Johnberg had some boiler replacements, which is progressing okay, as well as they had some masonry repairs done, which included some tuck pointing. The pool foundation at Hoffman, those repairs are completed. We had roof repairs at Palatine and Schaumburg, and they're 95% complete. We also had electrical panel upgrades over at Frem, Schaumburg, and those are close to being complete, as well as the elevators at Frem, Schaumburg, and Hoffman. They were being modernization, and those are they're on schedule and should be completed in time for school. And then we just have some paving work, some gym floor replacements, and carpeting replacements done. And that concludes what I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Dombrowski, anything to add?
We haven't had any meetings, that's basically the update that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that will bring us to our announcements. If there are no questions here, that will bring us again to closed session. We have a suggested motion that the board will enter closed session to discuss the minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. Can someone please move that? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Same as before. This needs to be discussed publicly.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Nay.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre,
Aye. Okay, we have a suggested motion that the board return to open session. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Ms. Cavill,
Here.
Mr. Kramer,
Oh,
Aye.
yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre,
Aye. Our first suggested motion is that the closed session minutes of the December 12, 2019, January 16, 2020, February 13, 2020, March 12, 2020, and May 21, 2020 no longer require confidential treatment and are to be approved and placed on file. Can someone please move that?
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre,
Aye. Our next suggested motion is that the Board of Education accept the retirement requests of Marilyn Cuddle, effective May 2021, according to the master contract of the United Support Staff. Ann Espel, effective May 2024, according to the master contract of the District 211 Teachers Union. Peter Konecki, effective May 2020, according to the master contract of the District 211 Teachers Union. John Shoro, effective May 2024, according to the master contract of the District 211 Teachers Union. Jackie Weingart, effective May 2020, according to the master contract of the District 211 Teachers Union. And David Woatis, effective June 2023, according to the master contract of the District 211 Operations Maintenance Group. Can someone please move that?
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre,
Aye. Next, we have a suggested motion that employee Nicholas Cozen be suspended for 3 days without pay. Further, that the board president notify said employee in writing of this action by the Board of Education. Can someone please move that?
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kramer,
Aye.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre,
Aye. Next, we have a suggested motion that the Board of Education approve the resolution regarding the suspension and dismissal of tenured employee Jean Hedgepath. Can someone please move that? So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I have discussion.
Please, Mr. Kramer, go ahead.
Okay, this is a serious matter. It is in this understanding and in good conscience that I don't believe the administration has met the burden of proof to discipline Mrs. Hedgepath, or that, for that matter, release her or put her on administrative leave. The administration case revolves predominantly around her Facebook postings and comments that were provided by email to the board and to the administration. These comments, opinion, were based subjective judgments, opinion, conjecture, half-truths, hearsay, and these, furthermore, these numerous emails were a orchestrated event that was conducted by community activists who, through the emails that he orchestrated to the board, was trying to discredit with a impeccable record up until perhaps the last 5 years of experience, and the allegations in the emails were without evidence of any wrongdoing. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
I would just.
Mr. Dombrowski, please, go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like to state that I think that the termination of Ms. Hedgepath is partially due to her inability to represent the district. But I think that this activity that it has culminated to this decision is basically the wrong arrow in the quiver. I don't believe that somebody's comments or opinions made in social media is really the camel's back broken by a straw. So recently, a centralist editor at the Gray Lady or the New York Times resigned due to pressure by her peers to conform. Growing up in the 80s, we would look at this as peer pressure, and now we have this social pressure that almost falls under a title of being illiberal. And I sense that is kind of what is happening here. And I think that's unfortunate.
Ms. Klimkowitz, do you have any comments to make?
I believe that everyone has a right to express their opinions, their thoughts, communicate their needs and their wants. But I think in this time and age with the social media, we just have to be very careful of the words we choose and how we use the social media because of the effect that it has on us and on other people. And I just really think that we have to be careful in regards to that. And I think someone as a teacher, there's a lot more responsibility that's placed on that profession. That's it. Thank
Mr.
you.
Young, do you have any comments to make?
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, in the past, we have let go other employees that have expressed things that were a lot less, how would I say, a lot less worse than what this Ms. Hedgepath has done. I think for us not to do this would then be kind of lowering our standards. We have to keep high standards here at this district. And I firmly believe that we have to go through termination. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenblum, do you have any comments? I do. Public comments aside, I don't feel that those are influencing, at least not my decision on whether or not to support the action that we're possibly about to take, but how I'm going to be expressing my vote and my decision this evening. Rather, it's based on a pattern of behavior which started in 2016 and has repeated itself. And my concern that that as an educator and someone who is molding lives of our students, that teachers need to behave in a certain fashion which supports that endeavor. And my concern is that Ms. Hedgepath has not exhibited such behavior repetitively, and my concern that she would not be able to do so going forward. Ms. Cavill?
The demonstrated lack of professionalism is most troubling to me as a teacher myself. Such conduct is unacceptable, and coupled with the repetitive failure to remediate such conduct, I'm supporting termination.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Nay.
Mrs. Klimkowitz,
Aye.
Ms. Cavill,
Aye.
Mr. Kramer, Mr. Kramer,
If that's for Mr. Kramer votes nay.
Mr. Rosenblum,
Aye.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Mr. Lefevre,
Aye. That motion carries. If there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.